Hey guys, welcome back to Altaz-Review, where we talk about the latest releases and the oldest masterpieces. We just got a look at the new Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. And seeing what they've done with the game, it reminded me a lot about what the old games did and what I felt might have been missing as well. So let's see what kind of things they added to the series and what kind of things they brought back from the originals. So let's talk about this new direction for Prince of Persia. Let's start with the story. Some basic elements of Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is that the prince himself is not the main character. Instead, we have an elite team called the Immortals, who set out to save the prince who's been kidnapped. Strangely enough, this is also the first time we hear the title character's name, Prince Ghassan. Although this new premise means we won't be rewinding time in this game, our main character, Sargon, has his own special powers to help him get through obstacles and defeat his enemies. There's a lot going on with this new story direction, as the new game plays almost like a soft reboot, going back to a time before the events of the first game, The Sands of Time. Seeing a new character and playing with new abilities is a fun way to get back into the game, but it's a risky move when it comes to attracting old fans. Seeing the trailers, the art style and 2D gameplay was a little questionable, but it all comes down to how well the combat and obstacles play out and how fun the game is. But the great thing is, the developers use the art style and gameplay to their advantage even in storytelling. Every character has intense emotions and movements that line up with the art style and artistic choices. And the 2D scrolling sets up some unexpected introductions as you scroll into a new area or fall down into a completely different environment. It also helps to transition between cutscenes and combat, since the art style is pretty consistent between gameplay and cutscenes as well. Comparing it to the old games, we have the much older side-scrollers like Sands of Time on the Game Boy and the 3D adventures from the PS2. But the overall story of the games was consistent. In fact, The Lost Crown felt quite similar to the first game, where you need to save the kingdom from a political enemy. A semi-political enemy started the series, so going back to a similar premise isn't too bad. The important thing is that the story of this game doesn't retcon the original masterpiece. Next, we have to address the gameplay. After a whole series of successful 3D action games, going back to 2D seems almost counterproductive. But considering that the 2D gameplay of the Game Boy version made it one of the best games in the series, it doesn't matter too much which path they choose, since the important parts of Prince of Persia is rooted in much more unique elements. The Lost Crown uses Sargon's unique abilities to get the most out of a 2D environment. It might have worked in 3D as well, but in a 2D game, it's never-ending fun to dash and switch weapons and abilities on the fly. There's also a lot of obstacles and traps that pay homage to the 2D games of the original and even a little bit to the 3D series. The difference, however, is that the time manipulation of the original games was the main attraction in all three games, and not having that in a Prince of Persia game might feel at least a little disappointing. The other thing to notice is how all the original games were kind of like roguelikes. Even though you don't get to backtrack freely, the story and puzzles lead around the same area constantly. The map isn't too huge, but with so many obstacle courses and locked doors to return to, the experience makes the map feel 3 times larger. The Warrior Within was one of the best games in this regard, since you could explore the whole map twice, in the past and in the present. The Lost Crown doubles down on the roguelike ideas by having you visit areas however you want, and even upgrade weapons and abilities by visiting characters and areas in different parts of the map. It's hard to say which method works better for Prince of Persia, but it's definitely an evolution of the original games. There's also usually a kicker in each game. After so much to take in after the first game, the sequel might have felt underwhelming. The Warrior Within used complete time travel to manipulate and get through areas by going back and forth in time. It also introduced the Wraith form that had you managing a constantly depleting health bar while trying to find as much sand as possible to get your health back. Two Thrones was basically an alternate timeline of the first game and had an idea similar to the Wraith from the Warrior Within. The Dark Prince form had a very God of War-like moveset, where you collect sand for health and need to find water to undo the transformation. And although I haven't played it, even Forgotten Sands added water control to change things up. The Lost Crown simply uses Sargon's new powers to change everything, by allowing the player to chain different abilities together to reach a different area, dodge traps, and make long combos against enemies. The ultimate attacks also give a kind of Street Fighter vibe to each encounter, especially boss battles. Ultimately, innovation is a key factor in Prince of Persia, so as long as we keep seeing new things that make sense to the lore, The Lost Crown remains a good direction for the series. As far as combat goes, the prince generally found new swords to pair with the Dagger of Time, where the swords would have different effects or attacks, but after 3 games, this might have gotten a little old. So giving Sargon multiple different weapons to pair together, like twin swords and a bow, along with magical abilities, there's a lot more room to be creative with combat without reusing the same old moves from the old games. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is a good game. It's not amazing or revolutionary, and I don't think it's enough to carry the Prince of Persia name just yet, mostly because of its legacy. With modern standards and heightened expectations after so many years, The Lost Crown has a lot to compare to. Even still, it's a fun game that takes us back to why Prince of Persia was fun to begin with. The Lost Crown is also a great way to restart the franchise while leaving room for new ideas in all directions. With the release of The Lost Crown and all its great ideas and its success, the next Prince of Persia can be a sequel, a prequel, a new story, 2D or 3D, and even a roguelike, or it could even have a linear story. And in either of these cases, it will still be a good direction because now we know how they plan to execute these ideas. Clearly, they haven't lost their great art designs and story ideas. So even after so many years, it looks like Prince of Persia still has a lot of potential going forward. Well, that's just my take on the jump from the old Prince of Persia games to the new Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I'm still waiting to play with the prince and use his time powers again, but until then, the new characters and ideas are still good enough to carry the series. Let me know what you guys think of the new Prince of Persia and what you want from these games in the future. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Until then, I hope I see you in the next video.